The best seat in the house is my perspective of the industry, whether I'm on the stage or off the stage.
You just need to be diligent in making sure you're practicing
Yes, sir.
and investing in yourself.
A David Whitworth song from Bethel is different than a Joe Volk song from Bethel. That's different than a Dan McMurray song from Hillsong. That's different than a Simon Kobler song from Hillsong United. The list goes on.
It just boils down to being a good human. That will open up doors, but not only give you the gig, but like give you true friendships.
All right. I never really know how to start these, so I kind of just
good.
like get into it and
This should just be the intro. I never know how to start this, you know?
that's perfect. I don't have to script anything.
You don't have to, man.
Well,
Yeah.
Joey, welcome.
Thanks, man. Dude, it's good to be here.
Dude, I'm so pumped to have you on the podcast.
Absolutely, dude.
We are currently on a tour right now. We are on Winter Jam, and
Winter
I
Jam.
am on Disciples Bus.
Yep.
And I've gotten to know Joey and the guys.
And inhaled many diesel fumes along the way.
Yeah, it's been, what, 2 months? Almost 2 months
Yeah.
of the tour so far?
I think we've only got like 14 shows left.
Yeah.
Like today's already March
crazy.
1st, which is insane. So
Crazy.
I guess 12 days will be 2 months on the road because we started January 13th.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we're
Yep.
right at 2 months.
You're right.
And are you as exhausted as I am?
Oh, I am.
Dude,
Well,
I am so tired.
Okay, so our last show was in Charlotte this past weekend.
Yes.
My girlfriend is from Charlotte, and so
Okay.
her parents live there.
Right.
So I didn't bus back with you guys.
I saw
yeah.
that you went to the Charlotte Hornets game.
Yes.
I'm going in a couple weeks.
Really?
Was it awesome?
Dude, it was incredible. It was
So
so
sick.
cool.
I've got tickets for Charlotte Hornets versus the Bulls on
it's gonna
March
be
31st.
such a good game.
So-
They were playing the Detroit Pistons when I went.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Charlotte just blew them out of the water.
Oh yeah.
But it was still really cool.
Yeah. Nice.
And so, yeah, I didn't ride back with you guys back to Nashville. I just stayed, with her parents, and then
Okay.
we hung out 2 days.
Right.
Anyway, I say all that to say I drove back in yesterday and then woke up this morning, or, got in late last night, woke up, did laundry, cleaned, just
Yeah.
kind of prepped for this podcast, and then we
Right.
have bus call right after this.
Yep.
And I'm exhausted. And I feel like that is only
Bet you are.
a small portion of what you have to kind of go through every week, because you drive from South Carolina here. to
Yeah.
bus
So
call.
I literally just drove about 5 hours 45 minutes to this studio.
Yeah.
And just directly from the car into here, and then what we got, like an hour drive
hour.
up to bus call after this. So yeah, I've been going back and forth every single week of the tour. Most people are like, why don't you live in Nashville? Working out in Nashville. And I tried living in Nashville for a while, and what I always tell people is like, I just was not good at operating in the city thing.
Really?
I just had the friend group here is amazing. Like the community of people in Nashville that I was surrounded by, absolutely incredible. But just operating in the city just got really old to me, like super fast. And so South Carolina is more my speed, and it really helps me mentally, like with in the mental health realm, to live in South Carolina. So driving back and forth, it's more of an inconvenience than anything, but it's like worth the price of admission for me.
Yeah.
So-
Man, yeah. So that was my first thought, was like, gosh, Joey does this twice a week. Like, you drive for a bus call, and then you drive back home, and then
Yep.
2 days later, driving
Yep.
back again.
Yep.
And just to do it every
And
week.
this past week was it worked out great because I only live an hour south of Charlotte. So my wife dropped me off at the bus. We met you guys in Kingsport, Tennessee on the way up to
Oh,
Pennsylvania.
yeah. Okay.
And then after the Charlotte show, I was able just to ride home with her,
That's so nice.
which was awesome. So after the show, I didn't even realize you didn't ride the bus because
Okay.
I wasn't on the bus.
Yeah, you went back with your wife.
Yeah, I went back home and I was in the bed by midnight after the show. So it was awesome.
So when you guys normally tour, I'm more familiar with the CCM and the country circuit. So for those of you that don't know, Joey is the drummer for Disciple. They've been around since late 90s, 97, 98?
92. Yeah.
So since before I was born.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I was 4 years old.
That is insane to me.
I was not in the band then.
I can only imagine.
Obviously.
So yeah, you guys have been around for forever, right?
Right.
When did you join the band?
I joined officially New Year's Day of 2014. My audition happened in like October of 2013.
Okay.
So
when you guys tour, what does that look like as far as like routing? Like, do you have to drive to Nashville once a week, or do you kind of just like in CCM and country, it's a lot of weekend warrior stuff for
Mhm.
2 to 3 months
Right.
of a tour. Do you guys kind of do that similarly as well? Or you kind of just leave, gone consecutively for,
Yeah.
and then come back?
So I'd say earlier, pre-COVID, we would go out for like 3 weeks at a time, or I think the longest run we ever did without seeing home was like 6 weeks.
Okay.
So those are nice because
Yes.
I drive in, and then 3 weeks later I'm just driving home.
Yeah.
I would say post-COVID we're looking at more sporadic. Like I think the longest we've been out recently maybe 10 days.
Okay.
I think. So like that's usually the longest stretch that we're out right now. But it has definitely been sporadic where I'll drive in like 1 week and we'll go do 3 shows, or maybe I'll drive in and we'll just bus out to go do 1 show and come back home.
Oh, okay.
So it's definitely been way more sporadic and not these like long consecutive
Right.
runs like I'm, used to earlier in my days in Disciple.
Okay. Cool. One thing that I really wanted to kind of like focus on partially in this
Mhm.
podcast was you're the first guy I've had on that doesn't live in Nashville.
Yeah.
And so I know for all the hundreds of thousands of viewers that I have, like 7 or 8 people other than my family
Yeah.
that are watching or listening, or anyone that does listen in the future that may want to do what we're doing for a living,
hmm
whether you're drumming or whether you're a musician outside of drumming.
Right.
A lot of people assume and think that you have to live in Nashville. And to
Right.
some extent that there's some truth to that, but
Mhm.
obviously you're living proof that that is not the case.
Right.
So kind of explain to me what that looks like, I guess the logistics of it, how difficult is it?
Right.
Just to kind of encourage some people that it is possible, and the steps that kind of you've taken or the things that you've experienced with, you living in South Carolina versus me who lives in Nashville
Right.
in the industry.
Well, I definitely think like if you're not in the music industry already and you're looking for, I guess, opportunity, I would say being in Nashville is probably a good idea, just
Yeah.
because of all the networking that you
For
can
sure.
do and friendships that you can form here with everybody. For me, I lucked out. I really did. I played for a church for a very long time in South Carolina. And I met a few people through that who were tied to the Atlanta music scene.
Okay.
And one of the guys, his name's Swaff. He used to do some stuff with Family Force 5, like
Oh,
like
nice.
produce some tracks for them.
Okay.
And I think he actually worked as their either tour manager or road tech for a while. But Swaff is a producer down in Atlanta, super talented guy. And I was working with him on some projects and everything that he had brought me in for. And one night he just asked me, he's like, what do you want to do with this whole music thing? He's like, you're super talented. You're not touring or anything. Like, do you want to tour? And I was like, that's all I've ever wanted to do is tour. I just don't know how to get into it. And so he was like, I'll just keep my ear out for an opportunity. And I think a few months had gone by, and he was like, "Hey, man, I've got an opportunity. There's a band down here called After Edmund. They're an indie pop rock
Wow,
band."
I have not heard of that name in years.
So you know that
Yeah,
band?
yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
this is where my touring career started.
No way.
After Edmund's drummer was leaving, and they were auditioning new drummers, and so I called Mitch Parks, who was the lead singer. And was like, "Hey, man, I heard you guys are looking for a drummer. I'd love to audition." And so I ended up auditioning and getting the job with After Edmund. And I started touring with them shortly after. And then After Edmund ended up opening for Disciple in 2013. And After Edmund was kind of coming to the end of their career. Everybody was kind of splitting up. And being on that tour, Disciple, Kevin saw me play.
Yeah.
And their drummer at the time, Trent Rife, was leaving the band, and so Kevin was like, "Do you want to audition for Disciple?" And I thought he was joking, because I
Yeah.
was just kind of like, "You guys have been like one of my favorite bands since I was like in middle school."
Yeah.
And so I auditioned, and then I got the job. So
Wow.
and this was all like I did not step foot in Nashville at this point in my
Yeah.
life. I didn't move to Nashville till I guess 2 years after I got in the job with Disciple.
Okay.
Just needed a change of scenery. It come out as like some pretty painful stuff in South Carolina, and I just wanted to, a change of scenery, change of faces.
Yeah, for sure.
And came up here, and it was good for me. Like I said, I had a lot of good friends and a great community. It just like the speed of the city wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And then I moved back. So, I can't necessarily say like moving to Nashville is going to like solve your problems or
Right.
like answer the question of like, are you going to get a job? But I definitely don't think it hurts,
Yeah.
like being here. But just be warned, there's like a crap ton of people here now,
Oh yeah, dude. So many
So,
people here.
I can't, every time I drive into the city, I'm just like baffled by how many more buildings they've built since the last week that I drove here. Like it seems like every week there's a new building somewhere and it's all living space.
And traffic is always insane.
Dude.
Getting anywhere in town is
and that's why I moved back.
Yeah.
Because at my town, I know how long it takes me to get to Walmart. I know how long it takes me to get to Starbucks. And I know how long it takes to get to my parents' house. And it takes that same time every single time. So and I like that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just kind of go through some questions that I've written out.
Okay.
And Joey has not heard any of these questions. I wanted to just read them to you and just get your full, genuine answer.
Okay.
And so here we go. How has your drumming style evolved over the years, and what artists or genres have influenced you the most in your career?
Okay. Man, I would say my drumming style has evolved a lot. I mean, from doing middle school band, high school drumline, all that stuff, kind of learning like rudiments and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was way better at rudiments and all the chops back then. Like since then, I've lost a lot of like my chops and rudiment stuff, and that's more because I have been lazy and haven't like kept up with that stuff.
Yeah.
But when I was in middle school, when I first started taking drum lessons, the town that I'm from or that I live in South Carolina is called Spartanburg, South Carolina. And there was a famous Southern rock band that developed out of there called the Marshall Tucker Band. And I'm sure some listeners will know who I'm talking about. And if you don't know who they are, look them up. They toured with Leonard Skinner. I mean, like they were a big deal. And they're actually still a band. They just had their 50th anniversary show in Spartanburg. And like there was thousands of people that came to see this thing. And anyways, so the original drummer for Marshall Tucker gave drum lessons in Spartanburg, and he was a family friend of like some of my extended family. And so I started taking drum lessons with him. And so I was with him for, I guess, about a year and a half, 2 years. So I was mostly getting trained in this like, Southern rock, like kind of vibe and whatnot. And this guy, Paul Riddle, is an incredible drummer. Like I highly encourage y'all to look, just, if you're out there, look him up on YouTube, watch some of his drumming videos. This guy's just a monster behind the drums. And so I got the opportunity to work with Paul for like 2 years and learn under him. And, he had like drum camps during the summer where we would go and we would actually get to play with members of the Marshall Tucker Band.
Dude, that's sweet.
We got to go in a recording studio and record to a track where the instruments were played by members of the Marshall Tucker Band, and there just wouldn't be a drum track. So you get to make up your own parts, and then you get your own CD of you playing.
Dude, that's really cool.
And so I still have those from when I was like 12 and 13 years old. So, I was definitely heavy. Like I was being trained almost more in the Southern rock realm, but I loved metal, and so my all-time favorite band's POD. Love POD. WOV is like the ultimate like groove master, the power and the energy that he brought to the kit. I was just like, God, I want that.
So good.
And when I saw the Southtown music video on TRL back in the day, when like, if you know what I'm talking about, the band is like in the middle and the crowd's around them just like moshing and everything.
It's so intense.
And their dreads are going everywhere. And I was just like, I mean, I have goosebumps right now thinking about it. Like that's the feeling that song gives me. And so when I was young and I saw that, I was like, I want to do that. And so I started just playing to POD records, the Fundamental Elements of Southtown record. And back then, I didn't have fancy in-ear monitors. I didn't have a mixer board. I didn't have anything like that. But my parents had this massive Bose sound system that was like this tower thing that could go really loud. And I just had it like perfectly positioned behind my head. And I would turn it up to 10 and I would play along to the CDs, just destroying my hearing, like just doing all the wrong things to my hearing. And so I learned how to play the POD, but on the flip side of that, I also had another favorite band, and they're called Slipknot. And,
Nice.
whole different speed
Yeah.
of music. Joey Jordison, one of the best drummers to ever live.
Monster.
And
Yeah.
so, Wuv didn't really do any double kick stuff,
Yeah.
but Joey did. Joey did a ton of double kick, a lot of the fast fills, and I was just like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And so Paul Riddle, being Southern rock drummer, Marshall Tucker band, he's not out there double kicking or anything.
Yep.
Nobody's teaching me double kick. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn how to play the Slipknot thing. So I begged and begged and begged for a double kick pedal from my parents. And one Christmas, I ended up with a Iron Cobra, Tama Iron Cobra.
That's a great
I'm
gift.
I'm an only child, so
Okay.
I didn't have to spread the love around too much.
Yeah.
I will say I'm definitely not spoiled. My parents made me work for stuff, so like if I got something good, I could easily lose it. Like they taught me really well and raised me really well. But they were also really good to me. Like, and they believed in my drumming. Like they wanted to see me. I think they saw the passion that I had for it and the love that I had for it. So they were just way better to me than they should have been. But that's what parents do for their kids. So I got these Iron Cobras because that's what Joey played, and I started learning how to download videos on Kazaa, Napster,
Wow.
BearShare, if you remember any of that stuff.
I remember some of
This
those.
was back in the day of dial-up internet, where it would take 3 days for a video to download. That was 30 seconds long. But I discovered the Slipknot Live from London DVD that I think it was recorded in like 2001 or 2002. Clips of that were available on Kazaa or Napster or whatever. And I remember finding Joey Jordison's drum solo from that show. And I downloaded it. Of course, had to wait forever for it to download. But once I got it on the computer, I remember I just sat there and just studied it like wide-eyed. Like, okay, he's like doing his feet. Like it looks like he's just running. So I guess I'll just go in there and try to run. And of course, starting out on double kick, I sounded god awful. It was so bad. But the more I figured it out, the more like I got my speed and got the spacing right.
Yeah.
I just taught myself how to play double kick. And then I would start like kind of dissecting how he did his fills. It's like, oh, okay, so instead of, like doing 4, he's going 4s and then 2s and then like hitting a bell and like all this stuff that's causing all these like notes to end up in these really cool spots. And so I just kept experimenting with those fills and then eventually just taught myself how to play double kick. And once I got the spacing right, just kept learning how to get faster and faster with my runs. Still not the fastest obviously in the world because there's some freaks of nature out there.
Right.
But just the evolution from learning Southern rock music to playing, borderline POD, Slipknot, early 2000s new
like
metal.
That new metal. Mhm.
Yeah, like that's where it evolved to. And then now with Disciple, Disciple kind of had that new metal vibe back in the early 2000s.
By God.
God and all that. And, Disciples really, I guess, challenged me in a different way. Like they're a rock band that's like somewhat technical. We're not like an August Burns Red that's super technical with all these like crazy breakdowns. But on the new record that we're working on, I told Kevin, I was like, dude, I am such a huge fan of new metal. Like I've been listening to old like Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, POD. I was like, can we like implement some of these vibes into our new record? And now the new record has a lot of new metal vibes.
Yes.
So
I love that.
I'm trying to bring it back. I don't want to evolve.
I'm with you on that.
I don't want to
yes.
evolve. I want to
Bring it
stay.
back.
I want to stay in new metal for the rest of my
Dude,
life.
I love new metal. Gosh, I grew up on that. Like listening
Yes.
to late '90s, early 2000s, Linkin Park, and
Oh, dude,
like,
Linkin Park.
even
Did you
just
hear
like-
the new song
no, I haven't.
You
No,
haven't?
not yet.
that
I want to.
Chester's on?
Yeah.
The unreleased?
Yeah.
Oh, bro.
I want to.
Yes, go
dude,
watch it.
I think one thing that's really, really impressive is you watching Joey Jordison who was insanely fast with his hands and his feet, right?
Insane.
But you downloaded that video, and the technology wasn't as advanced as it is now. Like
Not at
even
all.
like on YouTube, you can slow down or speed up
Right.
a video, right? So
Yep.
like you were watching his stuff at full speed,
Pretty much.
breaking it down.
Yep. On the old QuickTime player on a, God, I don't even remember what brand PC we had. I want to say it was a Sony Vaio, I think is what it
That's so
was. I think that's how you pronounce the name of those things, Vaio or whatever.
Oh my
Vaio.
gosh. I thought that was really impressive because as a teenager,
Yeah.
like even as an adult, it's really hard to break down something that fast and that technical
Right.
at speed.
Right.
Even at slow speed, it's difficult at
Right.
times.
Well, I should say I was not playing exactly what he was playing. I was more so just trying to figure out like
Got you.
how does he
Okay.
get around the kit this fast. So
Yeah.
I wasn't going in there playing Slipknot songs, like correctly at least. Maybe in my mind I
Maybe
thought I
trying
was
to
playing,
get close.
but it just watching that video over and over again and then just giving it a shot over and over again with the kick and just trying to get my hands and my feet
Yeah.
to match up. It eventually turned into where I could do it really well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that leads me to my next question. As you've evolved, and since you've joined Disciple, how do you approach writing drum parts for a record?
Well, so the guys that I'm in the band with, Kevin, Josiah, and Andrew, they're all insanely talented people. And over the past 10 years of being in this band, we know each other really, really well.
Yeah.
So I would say that I'm the weakest link when it comes to songwriting. Like I just don't know notes, and like if I'm gonna write lyrics, they end up being like the lamest thing in the world.
Cheesy and
Yeah,
like,
just
yeah.
not. And of course Kevin, who's been writing songs for 30 years.
Yeah.
Is just like he'll put lyrics together. I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you come up with these words and they just work together? That's insane. So whenever the guys are writing music, a lot of times like they'll go ahead and like record out the demos in their home studios and everything. And Andrew and Josiah will go ahead and put like just a pseudo, placeholder fake drum track in, and they'll program it super quick. And in certain parts, they'll be like, this is what I think Joey would do, And the running joke for the past couple of albums is they'll always, like, in certain songs, they'll program some, like, ridiculous fill to see, like, if I like it, and if I do, can they stump me? And I can't figure out how to play it.
Yeah.
So sometimes the guys actually do the drum writing for me because, like, I'll hear the fake MIDI drum track, and I'm like, that's a super cool part.
Yeah.
I'm just going to learn that. Like, there's no point in I really think that fits the song very well. And then there's other times where, like it'll just be this simple thing, and it needs to be like
Right.
spruced up. It needs to like have that live drummer feel to it. So I'd say about half. I don't want to say half and half, but they definitely program some fills sometimes, and I'm like, wow, you guys know me really well.
Yeah.
Like y'all hit the nail on the head, and then in other parts, I'm like, you don't know me at all. Like,
What were you thinking?
What were you thinking? And of course, they're not drummers, so they're just taking a shot in the dark. But whenever I go to actually write drum parts, I've got a studio set up at my house, just like a simple little recording rig. And Josiah will send me all the demos drumless, and then I'll just take a section of a song and I'll just work it, over and over and over again, listen back. I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is not cool. I'll re-record it. And then when I feel like I've got a solid idea, I'll send it to the guys. And in our band, we're really good about giving each other feedback, and nobody takes it personally. And so like if Kevin's like, hey, this drum feels just like kind of sticking out weird to me, like, could you try something else? I'm not like, oh, don't tell me how to play my instrument.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, sure, I'm going to try something different. And 9 times out of 10, I find something better. Or if I super believe in the part, I'll kind of like fight for it, you know? And both directions, it always goes like the best way possible. So I mostly spend just time in my bedroom, writing parts. And
so when
combing over it.
you do that, Is that just for like pre-production drum parts, or do you remote track as well from your house?
No, that's only for pre-production.
Okay.
Lester Estelle. Do you know
Oh
Lester?
yeah.
Okay, so Lester, for those of you who don't know him, he used to be the drummer for Pillar
Yep.
back in the day, and he plays drums for Kelly Clarkson now. No big deal or
Yep.
anything.
Yeah. He literally does it all. He's a monster.
He is one of the, if not best drummers on the face of the planet, and he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I'm lucky to call him a friend now. And he's got an amazing drum studio at his house down in Spring Hill, and so I recorded drums there for the first time with our Honor and Glory project, which is a side worship thing that we did a couple years back. And after recording there, the experience that I had, the drum sounds that we got, the way that the Honor and Glory album turned out, I told Kev, I was like, I'm not recording Disciple Records anywhere else. I'm going to Lester's. So I do all the pre-pro at my house, and then I go to Lester's to like do the final product.
Nice.
Yeah, rent out his studio for a couple of days.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's another cool thing too. Is like, even if you have parts finalized for the most part, like there's certain things that him as a producer and as a drummer, first and foremost, where he can point out certain things or help, maybe switch this double stroke to a hi-hat instead of the rack tom or something. And
absolutely.
It just opens up a whole new perspective.
And I love this energy of the studio because all the guys come to drum days. Like, it's not just me going in there with Lester. Like, the whole band's there. And there's, like, a certain energy that we have, as the four of us, to where when we all get in the same room, we get creative. Like I could be playing, and then Andrew may be like, "Hey, could you try like changing that cymbal? Like maybe like hit a bell and then hit this china or whatnot." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's try it." And then I'll play it, and sometimes it's like, "Oh, that's way better." I didn't even think of that.
The smallest thing could make the biggest difference.
It's like a group project, pretty much. And nobody in our band is like hands off,
this is my part.
Don't touch my part or anything. And like, even for example, the other day, Andrew was recording a few different guitar solo options for a song, and there was a part at the end of this guitar solo that was just kind of bugging my ear a little bit with what was going on with the drums. And I was just like, "Hey, like, you think you could maybe do something different in this part?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm down to try that." So like, it goes both ways, to where it's like, if I hear something weird, I'll be like, "Hey, is there another option for this?" And then I ended up discovering, like, okay, my ear was just playing tricks on me. Actually, what you played is freaking dope. Don't change anything. So it's really cool that we have those open lines of communication and creativity within our band.
Hey guys, I just wanted to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's episode. This episode is brought to you by To The Moon Creative. They provide the highest quality audio and video resources for all of your content. Whether it's a podcast or promotional ads for your business, they do it all. Not only do they record audio, but they also provide video and a killer space for you to film in. To The Moon Creative is located just outside of Nashville in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. You can find them on Instagram at TTM Creative or check out their website, ttmcreative.com. So going from the studio recording live, how do you prepare mentally and physically for a live show? Because your sets, I watch on Winter Jam, and it's only a 15, 20-minute set. 15, and when you guys headline or when you guys have longer sets, like what do you do to prepare for that? Because that's a lot physically.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I do preparing wise is like a couple of years ago during COVID, I started working out pretty heavily. So like I will do like P90X and stuff when I'm home.
Yeah.
This tour, I've totally dropped the ball on.
We have like 1 day home. So.
Bro, I'm so tired. I can't keep up with a workout program right now. So I've gained a few pounds. So I've got some work to do when this tour is over and I'm actually home for a consistent amount of time. But I don't really prepare I don't really have to prepare mentally for it. I just know what it is. And, physically, I just go in and I'm just like, this is what I got to do. And I look at the set list and, like our shows are typically like the first block is like 4 songs or 5 songs. And I'm just like, just take it a block at a time.
Yeah.
And so like play the 5 and then Kevin will talk for a second. I'm like, okay, that's my spot to kind of like rest and recover. And then I'm like, okay, got 4 more. We'll do that. And the cool thing about our sets too is Kevin still preaches. He still actually talks during our sets. So there is a time during the night where he actually he stops the show and he'll talk to the crowd for a minute, and when I say a minute, more like half an hour.
Yeah.
So I actually get like kind of a mid-set break.
Which is great.
That really helps.
Yeah.
If I didn't have that, it would be a little bit tougher.
Just nonstop.
And don't get me wrong, like a disciple show is extremely physical. Especially the headlining shows. And I'll never forget when I first started. When I first started with Disciple, Kevin asked me. He's like, I just want to check. Like disciple shows are really physical. Are you prepared for that? And I'm like, I guess we're about to find out. I don't know.
Have to be.
I guess we'll have to find out. So I really think adrenaline and it's mostly adrenaline that just takes over during the show that gets me through. And then when I'm done. Like I'm just wiped.
Yeah.
And Winter Jam, I severely underestimated it. I thought, 15-minute sets, no problem.
Yeah.
They're kicking my butt, dude. Like I am so tired
Yeah.
at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Like just from that. And I think it's just because it's long days too.
Yeah.
Like you're just constantly having to be on. You've got to set up. You got to. It feels like you go breakfast and then lunch is up and then you set up and then there's a VIP session and then the night's starting and you play your set and then you got to wait a couple hours, eat dinner, and then go out to signing. And it's like, it's just
It's
long
nonstop.
day. It's nonstop,
Yeah.
but it's not like you're doing much physically. It's more, I guess, mentally taxing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think for this type of tour, there's a lot that goes into it outside of, like you said, outside of playing, that just mentally takes a lot of energy out of you.
Right.
And arenas they're different, right? Like
Very
we're
different.
playing arenas, not theaters or smaller venues. So the type of energy that a crowd brings, you want to match that.
Right.
And that's a lot to try to match on stage and even
It
off
really
stage,
is.
like at signing and stuff. Like when
Yes.
I go and pass by you guys, like that line is really long and I'm about to load out our merch onto the
Right.
trailer and I'm like, I get to go to the bus soon. But these guys have another 30, 45 minutes of just, genuinely meeting
Right.
and greeting these fans. And it's not like a quick picture and then not on to the next person. Like you guys are intentional with talking,
Yes.
and giving each person time to tell you about their life or their testimony or vice versa. And everyone feels like they were, like they actually got to know you guys.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot.
Absolutely.
So back to on the stage, I feel like in this industry, we have to be flexible in a lot of ways. And so I wanted to ask you how you feel and how you've adjusted to the current situation with sharing a drum kit. So the way Winter Jam is working, we're backlining a kit. So all the drummers on the tour, except for two of the co-headliners, we're all sharing a kit. So we're all sharing it's a cool kit. It's a vintage kit. But for people like Joey, and slightly me as well, because I'm used to running a 5-piece. But for people like you that use extra cymbals, you have your double pedal, you have extra toms that you normally use, it's a completely different feel. It's a completely different setup than what you're used to playing with your stuff. So how has it been? Because you've had to be flexible. I mean, there was no not using that kit, right? So you can bring your cymbal stands and extra cymbals and use your double pedal. But how has it been to have to be flexible to only having 2 toms and not having the response of your actual kit? How has that been for you?
Yeah, the first couple of nights were pretty rough. Just trying to figure out the flow of the whole thing and trying to figure out, getting on stage because the set change times are super fast, as you know. So trying to get on stage and just handling the pressure of all that, it was definitely rough the first couple of nights and getting the feel of the kit. And it wasn't the most fun I'd say just the first weekend.
Yeah.
But after that, I felt like I really started to settle in. It's been cool. Now I feel like I'm just in a flow of things.
Yeah.
We figured out, the set change stuff, the best method of switching out all the stands and everything. And so I'd say I've adjusted pretty well.
Yeah.
It's never a drummer's first option to share a kit.
Right.
Every drummer is different. head tensions are different, like
Mhm.
kick pedal tensions are
Yep,
different. But I
exactly.
will say, getting to use my own like hardware and cymbals and stuff, like that's definitely, made the adjustment a whole lot easier.
Yeah,
Whole
and
lot
I've
easier.
noticed a big difference in that first week. I think for all of us, like even there was one show where we had to almost cancel like the first 3 artists in
Yes.
Mobile, Alabama. We almost had to cancel the pre-jam because even like the riggers and the staging and flying PA, all of that wasn't on time. Like we were
Right.
running like 2 or 3 hours behind, and that first week of tour was just hectic because everyone's getting their bearings and trying to figure everything out, including us as musicians, like figuring out the response of the kit, setting up, tearing down, playing to each, different arena
Yeah.
that we're playing in. And now we're like over halfway.
Mhm.
And I feel like we've all gotten to that point where like we feel good. Like
Yeah.
we're kind of coasting in a way,
Yep.
like we're comfortable and we've gotten in that good rhythm.
Yep.
But also like I feel it in myself, like the way I'm playing my set was different from that first week. And when I've watched your guys' sets, like I can tell that you guys feel a little bit more comfortable than that first week or two.
Oh, yes.
When you were still,
Yeah.
which is not fair because I always tell the guys this, like when we do festivals and when we're, in a situation where I have to backline, I tell the guys like it's not fair that you guys get to consistently use your rigs, your
Right.
guitars, your keyboards, and your pedal boards, and every show I have to adapt. Every show I have to use a kit I've never played before,
Right.
and I don't know what I'm walking into.
Yes.
And as a drummer, that's just kind of it is what it is in a lot of situations like mine,
Right.
where you're backlining. And so I thought it was interesting to kind of see how you and also the other guys handled using a backline kit and
Yeah.
kind of adjusting to it as the tour went along.
Yeah, and I think everybody's done an excellent job. Like everybody does pretty well at, I mean, typically when you share a kit, one of the biggest things is like I feel like even at festivals, like you'll end up there and the heads are like dented and stuff.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen one dented head
Yeah.
on here, and it's like even though I'm Hulk smashing the crap
Yep.
out of them, like everybody's pro enough to where like the stuff gets taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's definitely been very helpful.
Yeah.
As far as like all that. So sorry, I feel like this thing may be like cutting out on left, or maybe it's my headphones.
Is your
Sorry.
headphones? You sound good in my ears.
Okay.
Okay, so another question I have is, can you share any maybe like a particular memory or like a challenging experience you've ever had as a drummer, whether it was on stage or in the studio or outside of either of those?
Like a challenging.
Yeah, just
experience?
like for me right now, I sprained my knee, and so I'm having to play with my left leg,
Yeah.
and that is something that you really don't, people don't sit in their basements practicing to play with their left foot. So that's
Right.
a challenge that I kind of had to like jump on and try to figure out how to
Yeah.
navigate through.
Fortunately, I've never had any like physical stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we were shooting the music video for Radical back in 2014, and I busted my finger open all the way down to the bone.
Is that on a rim shot?
Yeah, like right as
Ugh.
the day was starting, so I had to record that whole day like with a just. I mean, my finger
bro,
hurt
that's
so
brutal.
bad. Like I should have probably had stitches for that, but I never went. I just used like skin glue and peroxide to try to take care of it.
Oh,
Another time, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I have had a couple physical things. We were playing soccer on like this dry, dusty field in Texas one time, and I was going for the ball, and Josiah was going for it as well, and we kind of tripped over each other's legs, and I just slid across this thing, and like sand spurs, all that stuff, like ripped my right leg up, and like to the point where the EMS like people cleaned it out, and they were like, if this doesn't heal up like in like a certain amount of time, like definitely go to the hospital because they may need to clean this out further. And we were like in Colorado a few days later and had a day off and free snowboarding passes, and my leg was like absolutely thrashed, like just oozing this nasty infection and stuff, and I had to stay back at the cabin while everybody else went and had fun. But
rough.
then I had to play drums with that, and I don't know if you've ever had like a bad like laceration or whatnot, where like if you have it propped up, the blood flow isn't as much to it, but when you like get the blood going back to it, like you stood up. It felt like my leg was falling off. And so I was playing drums with that, like on my dominant kick leg, and I need both feet for our music.
Right.
So I was just having to like just tough through it every night and just keep bandages like clean and wrapped and all that. I'd say like the bigger challenge that I have, and I mentioned it earlier, is just struggles with anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I have had to ward off so many like anxiety panic attacks on stage.
Really.
Like even currently in my own life, like I'm going through some kind of like weird episode of anxiety where I'm just like, even in this moment, like I have to like kind of fight off those feelings. And so when you get on stage, everybody's like looking to you to like entertain and do all this. And sometimes like mentally, like it becomes a lot for me, and I feel like, oh no, something's not right, and then it causes all these like weird like physical symptoms, and I feel like, oh no, like is something about to happen to me? Am I about to
Really?
like let all these people down? And it causes this like almost like panic attack stuff, and that is just like, that's a super challenging thing, especially when you're on stage and you're feeling all that. Like it's one thing to deal with it when you're just like operating like normal life
Yeah.
and all that stuff, but when you're on stage and you're feeling like you can't breathe, or you're kind of having like a little mental episode, like that's pretty challenging,
Yeah.
Especially also when you got a million notes to play, songs to remember, because that stuff can just like fog your brain up a little bit too, and cause you to kind of drift off. So I'd say like that's more what I deal with, and like in some of the challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, obviously there's nights where I'm tired, and you just kind of have to just dig down deep and find the muscles you didn't know you had to get through the show.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that, because that
Absolutely.
is something that I think a lot of people, not just drummers, but other musicians or other people outside of the music industry, do struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's both of us being Christians and being in the industry, the Christian part of the music industry, there is a stigma behind anxiety, behind depression, behind any sort of mental illness or mental battle that people fight and deal with.
Right.
It's really easy for people to just say, pray about it.
Yeah.
And God will fix everything.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Right.
I mean, like, you can pray about it, and we are
prayer is
supposed-
a powerful thing.
very powerful, and we do rely on the Lord for a lot of things. But there's also something else behind it that is super important. So how do you manage? Because I would have never been able to tell, being on the bus with you, seeing you behind closed doors, you've never had a panic attack, at least when we've been on this tour that I've seen. So how do you manage, and what would you recommend to anyone else that's struggling?
Well, I mean, one of the ways that I manage is exercise, like physical exercise, getting out, moving my body, even if it's just a 30-minute to an hour walk a day, just trying to get outside and move. As far as managing goes, like I was in a really good place for a really long time, like, and I've had a few like health things that happened over the past couple of years that just kind of caused like a little bit of fear to ramp up in me, and I honestly was like doing really good, and I don't know what it is about this tour, and it could be because I've dreamt of doing this tour since I was a kid. I've been going to Winter Jam since I was 10.
Yeah.
And do you remember like the first week? Did you go to the church service the first week of the tour?
Yes.
Do you remember Russ saying like, is anybody else in here having unexplained anxiety?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when he said that, I was like, yeah, me. Like, I don't know where this has come from. Like, I started having like all this like crazy vertigo and like dizziness, lightheadedness. Like even right now, it's coming and going for me. Like it's been going ever since the beginning of the tour, where it's just like I feel like this like social anxiety almost that I have never had a problem with before. Like I've always been a people person. I've always like enjoyed being around people, talking to people, meeting new people, and for whatever reason on this tour, like I have been attacked from all sides of this thing.
Yeah.
And so me managing has been very much just like, I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm just kind of like, I hope everything's all right. Like I'm just going to keep putting myself in social situations, like, because it seems like that's where I get like this unexplained nervousness. I get this unexplained like anxiety that just comes over me. So I don't know if it's like like a spiritual realm attack
Yeah.
type thing. If some, it just seems like anytime you're doing something that means something, or obviously the tour that I've dreamt of being on since I was a kid, naturally, of course there's going to be some opposition in some way. Whether that's self-inflicted or if it's a spiritual realm thing, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But as far as managing, like for me, I found like what I fear, it's just best for me to just put myself in it. Like put myself in those situations. And if something happens, something happens. Like if all this lightheadedness and vertigo makes me fall out, somebody will be there to take care of me, whatever. So I just do the best I can to take care of myself, and just kind of, my mom always told me when I was going through anxiety when I was younger, she was like, just ride the wave, like just ride it, and it's not going to last forever. It's just a temporary thing. It's a seasonal thing. And I've found that with every bout of anxiety or depression that I've ever dealt with. It's a temporary feeling that eventually does go away. There's temporary darkness, but there's always light on the other end of that darkness.
Yep, for sure.
And darkness doesn't last forever. So I just
man.
keep reminding myself of that, and I talk about it openly. Like, it helps me to like voice this stuff like that. Hey, in this moment, I've dealt with a little bit of social anxiety tonight since we started recording this podcast. It helps me to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Because I think, like you said, the stigma around it is, in the past, it's like been, suck it up. You're not tough, or you're weak for like admitting this. And that's not it at all. Like, I think, when we bottle stuff up inside, that's when it like can do the most damage. But when we actually say it out loud, it loses its power over us, because it's like, I'm voicing this out loud. This is what I'm going through right now, and it's all right. I just want y'all to know, like, to the people around me that love me, this is what I'm going through right now. And it's not to like be a bummer or be, party pooper or anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just where I'm at, and I'm okay with being honest about it,
Man, dude, thank you for sharing that. That's
absolutely
really good. That's really good.
So long ago, I thought that I was a problem. I thought that I was an embarrassment to my family. I thought, all this stuff, because like my first major like anxiety panic attack happened when I was in 10th grade. I was at school. I thought I was dying. Like it felt like I was like going to see Jesus very shortly after that. Dang. And it ramped into years of just, fear of everything. I feared to leave the house. I thought I was never going to see my parents again after I'd like leave their sight.
Man.
And so, bottling all that up and trying to like fix it on my own, it never worked. And so when I started actually being vulnerable and sharing it, like especially like when I got into Disciple, when I started sharing my story and like what I was going through, it started like people started messaging me like, hey, you really like helped me feel less alone.
That's awesome.
In this, because it's such an isolating feeling, because you almost feel like, is there something wrong with me? Am I a basket case? Am I, whatever? And
especially when you're a Christian, you're like, am I not a Christian enough? Am I not,
And it's like that stigma of just like, people are like, oh, suck it up, get over it. You'll be fine, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's an element of it where it's like, I've got to pick up and keep carrying on and fighting against this, but also like, I need help, and there's nothing wrong with saying like, hey, I need help. I need to talk to my doctor. I need to, change some things in my life. Maybe the way that I eat, maybe the way that I sleep, maybe the way that I exercise, all that, to help combat this. And it's different for everyone, so I don't think there's like a perfect formula for each, or for the broad scope of people, but for people to start talking about it and start finding those ways to like combat it is so great.
Yeah, there could potentially be a different thing for everyone. Like for you, it could be putting yourself in those social situations, and it helps. For somebody like me, it could be kind of isolating myself. To a certain extent, right? Because if you completely isolate yourself, it can be dangerous and you get lonely. But struggling with social anxiety, sometimes getting away from that is definitely what's best for me for a certain period of time. For a few hours or for the remainder of the day, and then the next day I bounce back and I'm back to
Right.
normal. You
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But I definitely think this is something that should be talked about more, and I appreciate you bringing this up and being
Absolutely.
just completely transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because especially when you're on the road, man, it's hard.
It really is. And people also assume when they see you on a big stage under big lights, stepping off a tour bus, all this stuff. One, their perception is that guy must have $1 million. That's not true. Number two,
Definitely not true.
the other perception that they think is, wow, their life must be glamorous, perfect. They have nothing go wrong. It's like, no. Like, I am just a normal person. I get up and put my pants on the same way everybody else does.
Yeah.
I brush my teeth the way everybody else does. I mow my lawn the way that everybody else does. Like, there's nothing that sets me apart from any other human being in the room other than just what I do for a living. You know, so I feel like sometimes people see us on a stage and they put us on this pedestal of perfection and they must have everything together. And like the more that I can break that down and be like, no, I'm going through the same stuff as you.
Yeah.
You actually might have your life more together than I do. Like, you know, it helps people like realize like, oh, wow, okay, these people that I'm looking up to, they're just like me. You know, they struggle with the same things as me. They get depressed too. They get anxious too. And, you know, like people also, I mean, like we'll be out on the road. I'll get a call. Hey, you need to get home. Your grandmother's dying.
Mm.
You know, like I'm not immune to all the normal
Yeah.
stuff. Like I've gotten that call, you know,
Yeah.
friggin' it was in Alabama about to walk on, like actually wasn't on stage yet. We were headlining that night. Got a call. It's like, hey, you need to get home. Your grandmother's dying.
Yeah.
And the band that was opening for us let us go first, and they headlined that night so
Wow.
we could get back home. And I made it just in time before she died a couple hours later. You know, so like, I mean, the whole perception that musicians are put together and we've got it all together and we must live the high life and all that stuff, it's like, no, it's not true.
Yeah, it's
Not
very
true at all,
false.
you
Yeah,
know?
we're human, just like everyone
We're
else.
very fortunate to do what we love to do. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of high moments in this. There's a lot of like great things about it, but like we're human beings with thoughts, feelings, emotions.
Yeah.
We hurt the same way that you do. We laugh the same way that you do, you know, and you know, the more that musicians can talk about that and be vulnerable with it, the better.
Well, dude, I think that is all really awesome to be able to share and to be able to kind of just open up, because there's other people that are struggling with that
Yeah.
or may struggle with that in the future. And so I'm thankful to have someone like you be able to just open up and be, you know, a potential resource for somebody to, you know, hear those encouraging words on how to deal with that,
Yeah.
or that it is okay to not be okay, essentially. We are almost out of time. I think, Tom, we got enough time, maybe 5 minutes or so. 5-10 minutes. I'm just ask one more question because
Yeah.
we got to make bus call and I
Yeah.
do not want to be late.
Don't want to make Andrew mad.
Yeah.
The nicest
So
guy in the world.
what advice do you have for aspiring drummers who are just starting out, and what do you wish you had known when you were starting your own drumming journey?
Man, I think the one thing I always tell young musicians, I'm like, one, get you a metronome, start playing with a click, because if you want to do what we do, you're going to have to be able to play with a click.
Yep.
There's no professional drummer out there not playing to a click.
Very true.
So I always say, start practicing with a metronome. If you go to public school that has a band program, I always recommend like getting into a band program and learning how to read music,
Yeah.
learning like the theory behind it. You don't have to go all the way through college. If you do, that's great. Like I only went to, I think 11th grade, because I took my senior year off in high school. I was like, my senior year, I just want to do nothing, you know,
Yeah.
and like enjoy my last year of high school. I don't want to be doing drumline and all this stuff. I also had some attitude adjustments that might have had something to do with that. So I would say, you know, like try to get into a band program, or, you know, even drum lessons, you know, with a drummer that you love or that you trust or whatnot.
Yeah.
There's so many drummers now, like prominent drummers, because of technology. You can like take drum lessons from your favorite drummer now, you
Yeah.
know, like Matt Greiner from ABR, and I've seen Aaron Gillespie from Under Oath do drum
Yeah.
lessons. I'm just like, God, if I could have done Zoom drum lessons with Aaron Gillespie back in high school, I would have lost my
Yep.
mind, you know. So there's so many resources out there. And I also tell people too, like, hey, if you don't have the money to dish out on lessons, YouTube is an endless resource
Yep.
of like just incredible lessons for free.
Yeah.
You know, so just dive in. And I would say one thing that I didn't do that I wish I would have done is learn all styles of music. Like if you love metal, you love rock, all that, learn how to play R&B.
Yeah.
Learn how to play country. Like verse yourself so well in all the music genres that you actually don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just going to make you a better drummer. Like it's going to make you this well-rounded drummer, and as you go throughout your career, you are going to have so many tools in your tool bag to where any gig that calls you, anybody that calls you, you're like, I can do that. I can do that. I've had some country stuff come across my plate, and I'm like, I can try.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like country gigs are the hardest thing in the world. It's more about the feel of it.
It's a different feel.
It's a different feel.
For sure.
And so, like, I'm like, man, I wish I would have spent more time harnessing that feel like I did the rock metal stuff, because it's like, that's my bag. But if you ask me to go play gospel music, not a chance, dude. I'm sitting on the sideline. I'm the water boy for the gospel drummers, you know?
Yeah.
So, I would just say, you know, do what you can to learn every single style of music out there. And, you know, if you hate it, learn to play it, you know?
Yeah.
And
put that on a shirt.
Yeah. If you hate it, learn to play it. And don't hate on other genres of music. Like I can't stand when people like hate on country music. Like if it's not your thing, that's fine. But I mean, there's no doubt that music is connecting with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And shoot, one day country might pay your bills.
Yep.
You know, and you're going to like waste out on this opportunity just because you're like, oh, I don't like to sing about tractors. Who cares? Like, whatever. Like, learn how to play drums to it. And if you get that opportunity in country, your bank account will probably be thanking you, because that's where all the money's at.
Especially
these
if you
days.
want to move to Nashville.
Yes.
That's
So yeah, and just be a person that people want to be around and people want to work with. I've always lived by this principle, is that talent will get you in the room, but character is the thing that will keep you in the room. If you go in with a lot of talent, but you have no character, you're not going to be around for very long.
Yeah.
People aren't going to be wanting to work with you. They're not going to want to like surround themselves with you. If you've got talent and you've got the character, you've got that, you're a team player, you're a nice person, you actually genuinely care about people, you're not just trying to use up people for what they can give you, that's what's going to keep you in the room. I've seen super talented people who can run circles around the least talented guy lose the job because the lesser talented guy has all the character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the person with no character, no morals, who's just a jerk, who thinks he's got to be the tough guy.
Yep.
People don't want to be around that, man.
Yep.
And like toxic people in the music industry, they find their way to either other toxic people in the music industry or they're not included at all.
Right.
And especially if you are in a band that is on a tour bus, one toxic person can make an entire bus miserable.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
so like people want good people in a touring situation. So you don't want to be the toxic guy on the bus, because you won't be there very long.
Yeah, you're gonna get.
So that's what I always say. Like, talent will get you in the room, character will keep you there.
Well,
so
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Wise words from Joey West. Well, man, I think that's all the time we have for today.
Dude, thanks for having me, man.
Thank
This
you
is
so much.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you drove in extra early from a different state to make this podcast.
Bro,
so.
well, it's been so good, like, hanging out with you on tour, like, becoming homies and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I know our days are crazy and everything,
Yeah.
but the times we've gotten to hang out on the bus and, you know, watch comedy sketch shows and just hang out, it's been great. You know,
dude.
it's been awesome.
Yeah,
So,
man. Well, I'll definitely want to have you back on, maybe
Please.
a year from now or so, and
Absolutely.
dive into some other, things that you've got going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for today. I will catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.